Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all well. Today's video is my top books of 2021. So without further ado, let's get straight into the video and see which books were my best books. So I have done 21 books to go with 2021 because I had to. But yeah, I do have a top 21 books, and you probably will agree with me because you probably have seen my vlogs and my wrap-ups, and you could probably tell how much I love these books. So I'm going to go through all the books that I have physically, as some of the books that still are on my top best books I have got rid of purely just because I want other people to read them. And as much as they were amazing and I loved them, I don't think I would probably ever reread them again, only because they are so absorbed in my mind. Like, all of those books have stayed in my mind like months later. I just know that, you know, even years time, I'm still going to remember them. They're one of those books that have just stayed with me, and they will continue staying with me, and I also wanted to pass them to other people for them to enjoy as well. So I'll get to them after I've done the physical books, but they're not in any order. I'm just going to do the paperbacks first. But first up is the Throne of Glass series. So I have read this. I have read the first 4 books in the series. I've obviously read the one before this one, but I don't own that anymore. But I didn't read it this year. I need to actually finish because I'm still currently reading Empire of Storms, and I've got Kingdom of Ash and Tower of Dawn to read. But that will be at some point. But yeah, I think you all know by now that Sarah J Maas is probably one of my auto-buyer authors. I adore her. I adore her books. Like, I read A Court of Thorns and Roses series and loved that, and when I finally got to the Throne of Glass series, I was like, do you know what? These are even better. So Throne of Glass series is definitely on it, but particularly Throne of Glass, I thought this book was outstanding. Like, it's just amazing. I love it. It's Sarah J Maas. You know I'm a stan for her, so obviously her books are gonna be my best books. So that's the first book. Next up is Rhapsodic by Laura Thalassa. This is a new author to me. This is a book that I've been wanting to read for so long, and I finally bought it for myself in October because October was a rough month, and I was like, I don't care that it's 10 quid, I am buying this book. And my word, I was not disappointed. This is just amazing. It's, you know, it is a fantasy romance. I'm here for it. I love it. I've got the other 2 books that I do need to read. Like, honestly, they're probably going to be put in my February, to be fair. But I just love this. I love this so much. I'm so glad I finally bought it, and you know, it is one of the best fantasy romances I have read, and I'm here for it. Next is the Blood and Ash series. So I've got all 3 here, but I'm not counting all 3 because then it wouldn't be 21. But they're pretty much the series. I'm counting as one book. But from Blood and Ash, Kingdom of Flesh and Fire, they are really chunky books, and The Crowd of Gilded Bones. Obviously the 4th book is coming out this year, so I'm really here for it. But love this book. Like, everyone was going on about it, and I was just like, oh, like, I don't see the hype. It's a fantasy romance. I quite just like reading fantasy. Clearly I like reading fantasy romance books because I literally read a couple of pages on this and I was hooked. The series just gets better and better throughout, in my opinion. I know a lot of people say Kingdom of Flesh and Fire is their favourite book, but I love the 3 books equally. I am very excited for the 4th one. I'm not 100% sure whether the 4th one is the last one or whether there's going to be more. If it is the last one, I am going to be torn because I absolutely love Poppy. I'm obsessed. I am absolutely obsessed with the characters. Castile, sorry. Ugh. It's just, honestly, it's just, yeah. Like, I think if you've read the books, you will probably understand why I love it so much, but they're just so good. And then we're on to the hardbacks. Empire of the Vampire by J. Kristoff. This is my first J. Kristoff book. Now, I must admit, have I done that so every other J. Kristoff book I read won't stand up to how amazing this book is? I don't know. But everyone who's read a J. Kristoff book says the books are amazing. So I might, we'll see. But this was outstanding. It was just the best vampire book I have ever read. I love the fact that they have made vampires a monster. They're not a supernatural being to love, really, in my opinion. They're not Twilight vampires. They're not Vampire Diaries vampires. These vampires are monstrous. They're horrible. They're evil. But my word, was this brilliant. I just loved it. And it was like a story within a story as well, because you're reading a story, but you're actually reading, I've forgotten his name now. You're reading Gabriel Lee Leon's version of what happened, saying it to the vampire while the vampire's writing it. It just gives me Stardust Sea vibes within it being a book within a book within a book sort of thing. It was amazing. It was, I wouldn't say it was extremely fast paced. Like, it is a chunky book, and there's you're backwards and forwards a lot and all that, but it's just so full of action. It's so full of plot twists and oohs and ahs that you don't really mind that you're not breezing through it as quickly as some other fantasy books are. Like, this took me a while to read, but my word, was it exceptional. I read it and listened to it on audio, and both were just fantastic. I felt with the audio, I loved that the narrator did different voices for each character as well. It was brilliant. I love it, and I'm kind of worried that I may have set my standards a bit too high with J. Kristoff, because I have got other books of his and I'm there thinking, are they going to be as amazing as Empire of the Vampire? But I certainly love his writing, and his humour is absolutely on par with mine. Like, he has got some dark humour, and I have to. Like, not a lot of people get it, and the fact that J. Kristoff had similar ones, and I was laughing, and I was like, I know I probably shouldn't laugh, but yeah, it was amazing. Like, honestly, loved it, and it was a perfect book for October. Oh, another chunky book, A Court of Silver Flames for Sarah J. Maas. Obviously, this was going to be on my top 21 books. This was steamy as hell. It was steamy, probably the steamiest book she's written in the Court of Thorn and Roses series, in my opinion. But I loved it. I loved the steaminess. I loved the banter between Castiel and Nesta. But what I loved most about this was the mental health representation. A lot of people didn't like Nesta in this book. A lot of people didn't like this book. I loved it. I feel like I understood Nesta a lot better, and why she was the way she was at the start in A Court of Thorns and Roses and throughout the series. I love that this was completely all about her and her feelings. I felt it was a very feminism sort of book as well in some cases. I just loved it. The mental health rep was done so well, and I honestly, there was parts of this book that really resonated with me, and I was like, oh my god, this is me. But yeah, this is just amazing. Like, I love Sarah J. Maas, so I am going to love her books regardless. And next two books, which are obviously I go on about them: Kingdom of the Wicked, Kingdom of the Cursed by Kerry Mansakelko, and yeah, I can see why everyone loves the series. Like, I must admit, I thought Kingdom of the Cursed wasn't as good as Kingdom of the Wicked. I did like the fact that Kingdom of the Wicked, we had like a murder mystery going on as well, and I felt it had more magic involved. But Kingdom of the Cursed, I just love the fact that we're in the underworld. We met the other princes, and obviously other stuff happened, and I'm like, yes, I can't wait for the third book, which is the last book in this trilogy. So I'm a bit like, ooh. But it's now been put out that it's called Kingdom of the Feared, which I did kind of guess on her Kerry's Bookstagram. She said, oh, what do you think the title's going to be called? Pretty much everyone was saying it's got to be Kingdom of the Feared because of how it ended and what's going to happen in the third book. But yeah, like, I've seen a few little teasers of what's going to be in the book, and I'm so excited for this. But I love these two books. I like the fact that it's a forbidden romance, but I also really like the magic side of things, and that you've also got other like supernatural beings as well, like vampires and everything like that. It was just so well written, so well done, and I just loved it. And it did not take me long, should I say, to read that series. It was just fab. Like, I've actually got a couple of Carrie's other books, Stalking Jack the Ripper, and is it I can't remember what the other book's, something Prince Dracula, something like that. So yeah, I want to read her other books as well, because I just really do like her writing style. And then we have books that I did own but I don't own anymore. So first up is Deadly Education, which, to be fair, I do want to buy my own copy. I actually read it in the library and I loved it so much. I do have the second book, The Last Graduate by Naomi Novik. So I do want to buy Deadly Education just so I can have the collection together. But this was probably one of the best dark academia books I've read. Like, I read Ninth House in November. Like, again, this is the second try I read it, and everyone was like, oh, it's a supernatural dark academia book, it's got like a thriller and it's really good. I felt it was quite slow. Like, the ending was brilliant, and I would love to read the next book whenever that comes out, because the ending was such a cliffhanger. But I feel, to me, Deadly Education was the perfect dark academia book that had supernatural in it, because it was brilliant. It was monsters, it was like, you know, horrible like classmates, it was like fighting for your life. It was just fantastic. I read it within a few hours. Like, it wasn't even one day, it was a few hours. I literally just sat down. I think Alice was at her dad's. It must have been, because it was a weekend. I wasn't doing anything. I just sat down and read and read and read. Apart from going to the toilet and eating, and even eating I still read. I love it. And yeah, I read it in the library, and I definitely want my own copy, because I do want to actually read The Education again and then read The Last Graduate straight after. So yeah, definitely that. Another one is A Dark and Hollow Star. I love this. I love this more, I think, for the LGBTQI plus representation. Like, we had a lot of rep in there, and I was just like, yes, like, it was all of it. Even the author themselves is in the community, the characters. It was just, you know, I felt for in a fantasy, that was brilliant. I don't see it often in fantasy, in my opinion, and I just love that side of things. But also the magic system and everything as well was just fascinating. I am curious to know whether there is actually like a second book to it, because it did end in a cliffhanger, so I'm sort of thinking, is there a second book? But I can't remember whether there was or not. I need to look that up. Next, In the Ravenous Dark, which is another LGBTQI plus fantasy book. I love this. It was such a unique magic system. It was like blood magic, and it was just really interesting. I love that it was a different kind of relationship. It was really good. I actually unhauled it when I sorted out all of this, purely because I think it was just a standalone book, but also I don't want to explain it to you guys purely because of spoilers, but I can remember everything that happened in that book, and I read this like the beginning of 2021 or middle of 2020. I can't remember when it was, but I still feel like I read it like a day before, and I just wanted someone else to enjoy it and hopefully be their favourite book as well. Another one is A Touch of Darkness, which I read on my Kindle, which is a Hades and Persephone retelling. I like Hades and Persephone. I love retellings of that kind of couple, and it was so steamy. Like it was just a steamy romance. There wasn't really much into it. There was magic involved as well. We obviously got Greek mythology, and so it was that, but it was just a steamy romance. And I had the other books in the series to finish because it did end in a ooh, but it was just fab just because it was steamy and it had my two favourite Greek mythology people. Next, again, I've got from the library, but do want to get my own copy because I do want to do a graphic novel and manga shelf, and that is Thornhill. It approaches loneliness, it approaches mental health really well. It approaches like how naff the social services system is, and the twist at the end I was just absolutely shocked by and was like, what? It was just so well done. Like it was a fantastic graphic novel. I loved it, and I have actually put on my wish list to get the other book, which is, I'm not 100% sure whether it actually carries on from Thornhill or whether it's got a different story to it, but either way I definitely want to read it. It's really good. So I do want to get Thornhill as my own copy because it would be one that I'm happy to reread and reread and reread. Next is Gothikana, which is on my Kindle, and that is a dark academia romance, and I loved it. It was a slow burn romance. It was like an enemies to lovers trope. It was all of the tropes that actually I like in romance. It had dark academia vibes, and it was good. It was really, really good. Next is The Girl from the Well series by Rin Chupeco. So it's A Girl from the Well and the Suffering. I love those books, but I wouldn't personally keep them because to me, rereading them again, it would just, I know what happens, I know what's going on. It would be a bit of a spoilery for me. But it's, a ghost story, but it's got Japanese culture, Japanese folklore, and those two books really got me into wanting to read more Japanese culture books and more Japanese folklore and mythology. It's just something I'm quite fascinated in and really do enjoy. Next is A Familiar Sight by Brianna Labusquez. That's a crime thriller. I love her. She is my auto-buy author for thrillers. However, I find with thrillers I cannot keep them to reread them because I already know who done it, and it's just I can't enjoy the book anymore. So I tend to give those books to Hannah because she enjoyed one of the ones that I gave her before, so I was like, oh, she can have them. Stone the Dead Crow, which I read for a tour spot. Just the most amazing plot twist and ending I've ever read in a thriller. It gave Behind Her Eyes a run for its money of how it played out, and it was just brilliant. Hostage, I've actually swapped that with someone. Again, the big massive plot twist at the end, like it ended and I thought, oh, that's it, and then you got like an extra bit and I was like, oh, and then you have the epilogue and basically this person kills these people, and you're like, just as you thought it ended, it just opened up a complete new story where I was like I genuinely want to know, but would there be another book on all that? It was fantastic. I love the fact that it was like all set in a plane. It's officially made me really scared of planes now. Like, I didn't like them in the first place. I definitely now don't want to go on them. It was just so well done. I quite like Claire McIntosh's work. I've read a few of her books and I quite like how she does, but this was definitely her best book by far. And if you haven't read it, read it, because you will be gobsmacked by how it ends. Next is The End of Men, which is another book I read. Oh no, I read that for Tandem Collectors Read Along. I actually gave this book away because someone desperately really wanted it, and I was just like, I don't think I would probably ever reread it, as it's very close to the pandemic and all of that, but it broke me. I sobbed. I'm glad that it had a happy ending, but it's one of those books that I'm glad I read it, but it was also, it really does make you think of the pandemic, and when you're in a pandemic you kind of don't want to read another book about that. I personally wouldn't reread it again just because I know how it plays out in that sense, but the writing was done so well, and how the author thought of this, and she wrote this before the pandemic even hit, but obviously it came out, she had a date for it, so she made it go out anyway. But yeah, it was just very hard hitting, it was so emotional, but it was very, very interesting and well done. Next, The Crossing by Manjit Man, which I'm very happy to say has won the Costa Book Awards and for that particular book, and I am so chuffed for her because it was amazing. I loved it. It moved me so much. I sobbed because I honestly thought it was going to end happily and it didn't, and I was like, how dare you do that to this particular character? But it really opened my eyes to racism. It opened my eyes to it's a book that will stay with me forever, and I have unhauled it just because I want other people to read it. Like, I swapped it with someone to read it, but it is a book that will stay with me. Like, you know, I can still remember all about it. Yeah, it was heartbreaking. I was emotional over it. Next we have Blackout, which is by Nick Stone, Angie Thomas. It's like short stories by all of these different authors, and it was just a really good book about a blackout that happens and following all these different characters and finding love. And it was just a book pretty much out there to say black people can be heroines, black people can be in love, black people don't have to have stories about them being well, it was just, it was a story that wasn't focusing on racism or anything horror that black people go through. It was giving them a heroine voice and also showing that actually they can be happy, they can be loved and all that. And I liked the fact that these authors did that, and it was just a really lovely book to read. And the hidden message in it, like, you don't sort of realise that hidden message until you read all of the author's notes and why they did what they did, and then you're like, that makes total sense, and so it should be. And lastly, Before the Coffee Gets Cold. I got this from the charity shop. I've unhauled it just because it's a really awful copy. However, I do think I'll probably buy my own copy, like a proper copy, and the book after it. But I honestly did not expect to love this book. I thought, no, it's not my kind of jam. It's not my kind of jam usually, but I just love the fact that people sit and have this particular coffee and then they get transported to the past or the future, change. Ugh, it was just wonderful. There were two stories that really made me bawl my eyes out, which I was expecting anyway from what was said about it. But it was just so thought-provoking, so cleverly done, and something that really surprised me that I didn't think I would enjoy. In fact, became one of my best books I ever read, and I just love, and I need to get my own copy to reread again, but also read the other book, although people say the other book isn't as good. But I honestly think if I love that one, I'll probably love that one too. Soleil à la 21 books that I loved in 2021. And yeah, let me know if you've read any of these books. I'm sure you all have, because they're very popular books. I honestly expect that most of these books you probably expected to be on my top 21 reads. But yeah, thank you for watching. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you again soon. Bye.